Thank you, Lucy, for coming to visit us and agreeing to appear on our Women Who Make It Happen series. It'd be good for us if you could introduce yourself and then talk a bit more about your career journey.
Oh, thanks very much for inviting me.
You're welcome.
So I'm Lucy Morley. I work at Tint Financial Services, which is a startup financial services company. We do trade finance. It came about because it needed to, really. There's not a lot of SMEs being serviced maybe in the way they want to be serviced in the trade finance space. So it came about out of a necessity, really. So we fund the whole trade cycle of trade finance for these clients. So we pay out to their suppliers and we get money back in from their end buyers, so a true trade finance facility. I'm the Chief Credit Officer there, and been there for a couple of years. But I've got 20 years in banking behind that, so I've done all sorts of things in banking behind my Tint experience.
So what made you get into financial services in the first place?
So I got into it straight out of university, actually.
Okay.
So went to do the milk round, as it was called. Yeah. And I don't know if it still is, but went to do that. And really at the time, there was only two big industries this properly dates me, but when I left university, so there was management consultant, or there was banking. And actually the banking side of things just appealed a bit more. I applied for a relationship manager role actually at Royal Bank of Scotland. So it appealed to my sort of personality type more, really. I was quite ambitious when I left university and wanted to sort of have a career. And that was the one that appealed the most. And that's how I got into it. RBS then took me on as a graduate, so I had to do all my
training.
Even just to get in, it was loads of workshops and all sorts to get into the graduate scheme.
Gosh.
It was one of the best ones at the time, so I was very lucky. And then they paid me to do a degree in finance because I didn't actually have a degree in finance.
Even better.
I was working for them. So that's how I got into it.
Excellent. Was there anyone particularly that inspired you during your journey, a female or a male?
While I was there, so I was really lucky. While I was at Royal Bank of Scotland, I was in the leverage finance portfolio team. And we had Alison Rose was in the leverage finance origination team. So I was junior and she was the director of a team.
Yes.
So she was there then. So I've always been able to watch her career, really, because she's obviously been really impressive. So she's been someone I've always watched and sort of inspired me and looked up to. Because you could see, and I saw how hard she worked then, even when I first started out. So she definitely did. And then sort of further on, I was lucky when I started to get ahead of roles. I was really lucky that there were a lot of really impressive women. So there were 3 on our executive committee when I was looking at that. And again, so International Women's Day, things like that, I was able to put a panel together of our executive committee, women on our executive committee that could talk about, life at that level as a female. So actually, there's been some really good people to look up to.
Oh, that's really good. Yeah. That's really good. Yeah. Any mentorship type opportunities at that time?
Some of the women have mentored me amazingly, and also some of the men. Men obviously get a bad rep. Some of them have pushed me and believed in me more than I believed in myself sometimes.
Yes.
So I genuinely think mentorship is the way to achieve your goals. Yeah, actually, I really do believe in that. Some really impressive people have sort of got me to where I am, definitely. Yeah. And actually now I find if you get any networking event, you're always sort of blown away by some of these ladies, that they're so impressive and they're so inspiring. So I come away from every single networking event, well, that's another role model. And they're amazing. And there's some really clever, talented individuals out there that are doing some really great things.
Which is nice that we've got those people to aspire to nowadays, isn't it?
Completely.
Yeah.
Yeah, completely. So we've got like Debbie Wasco, who's, my age and just set up her 4th business, and
wow.
Jennifer Geary, who's written 6 books on C-suites, and these people are just there trying to help other women and being really impressive in what they do. So yeah.
Well, excellent. Well, hopefully your story will inspire individuals to take that challenge. You never know who's going to watch. So what has been some of the challenges that you've come across during your career?
I think when I started, it was absolutely unique to be a female in banking,
yes.
really. And I started in the graduate scheme. There were a couple of other women. There weren't really any others in my area.
Yeah.
Alison Rose did stand out, and she was amazing. She'd have stood out. She was, not the only female there, but it was noticeable. And I went from RBS to Bank of Ireland, to Credit Agricole, CIT, and it improved.
Yes.
But yes, it was sort of noticeable. And there was, some adversity by being a female in banking at that time. I think now I don't suffer from that at all anymore, and it's changed completely. But when I've tried to explain to some of my younger colleagues, they said, you never guess this happened, and they almost think you made it up.
Yeah,
because it's
so alien now for them, isn't it?
Yeah, this is 20 years ago, so good. It should have changed.
Absolutely.
But no, I think there's always challenges in a career type role.
Yeah, absolutely.
But actually, they all help to make you stronger. Is not quite the right word, but it builds up your resilience.
Yes.
So then you're able to cope with the next thing, and areas where I've worked where things have maybe not gone to plan. It just you learn more there than you could possibly ever learn if everything was going well.
Yeah.
So yes, there's been. Obviously, in any career, there's some challenges, but I think you do learn more in those.
Absolutely. I think you need those stepping stones, don't you, to get you to where you end up.
Yeah.
And so how did you get to your current organisation where you are now?
So I moved from leverage finance to trade finance for a role. It was a credit role. I said, credit is credit at the end of the day. So I moved for a credit role. And then we wound up that bank, actually. So there was a team of us that wound it up. And then at the end of it, a couple of us decided that we would start up a new financial services company. And having sort of seen where the gaps were in the trade finance space, then there was a real need to do it.
Yeah.
So then there's 6 of us that have started up Tint together.
Excellent.
So it went from there, really. It's seeing a gap, thinking, we could do that.
Yeah.
And then doing it. So, yeah.
Did you not think that as the other company had wound up, that those potholes were insurmountable? Or?
The other company was in a slightly different space.
Okay.
So it was, so they were in a slightly different space. So it wasn't replicating that in any way, shape or form. It was having worked in trade finance, seeing where there were some areas where SMEs were underserved, really.
Yes.
So, yeah.
There seems to be quite a gap in some of the SME world for entities to come into it, and there are more coming into the environment to give those lending products that are perhaps needed that the bigger companies won't do. Where do you see Tint evolving in that space?
I think, to be honest, and you're quite right, and there's the sort of advent of all the fintechs, and everybody's finding these niches, and they're all there. They're all, needed.
They're all needed, aren't they?
Totally needed.
Yeah.
And the big banks do what they do. I mean, they do it brilliantly, and I've worked at a lot of them, and they do that brilliantly. But there's these smaller spaces that are maybe not as profitable or not as scalable, whereas the fintechs can take them on and do them really, really well, and add a lot of value. And so, and Tint's one of those. So it can add a lot of value in that space. The trade finance market is trillions.
Yeah,
we don't have to have a
big chunk.
No, we need a tiny
percentage.
portion of it to be able to help people.
Yeah,
and the SMEs are the ones that largely the ones that don't get access to the funding.
Yes.
But 9 times out of 10, they're dealing with some big credit on the other side.
Yeah.
So actually, you can take, as a trade finance financial services company, you can take on that risk because your credit risk is actually on quite a large company,
yes.
the end buyer.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think it does work. There's a lot to go for. I don't think we need very much of it at all, really.
No.
But you can really help with these companies if you kind of have a product that you can offer,
which is great.
They can use. Yeah. Yeah.
So how, being a smaller entity, are you thinking of things like diversity in Tint itself, and how are you evolving that?
So we've got the trade finance product. We've got an insurance product that's sort of all lined up and ready to go, FX, so that you would cover this sort of like a one-stop shop.
Yes.
So you'd have a kind of complete one-stop logistical shop for somebody coming in and needing all of those services. It works in terms of a lot of the information, the data that you're using, you only then need to use it once, or collect it once, probably more importantly. So you've got a bit of an advantage and a bit of a synergy through that, that you can use all of that information in all those different ways, but also that companies can come in, and some of them may be slightly less sophisticated and come in and not know how to get hold of some of these products, and then you can offer it to them all. At the minute, it's pointing people in the right direction, but once all the pillars are up and running, then you can offer it all to them through one umbrella.
Excellent. And how big is Tint now? How many people?
So it's still the sixth.
Yes,
it's
still six.
So
wow.
It's still the sixth. It's still very small.
Yeah.
So we're going through our fundraising at the minute.
Yep.
So it's So we are still the sixth.
Gosh, that's really good that you haven't felt the need to grow, because obviously sometimes that happens and people balloon in size to do the scale up and then don't necessarily get the funding and everything behind that.
No, and it's horses for courses. What we found is actually the portal is really solid, so that's behind us, and we've lent. In the last 18 months, we've lent about $45 million.
Oh, wow, that's good.
So it's ticking, it's proven concept.
Yes.
It's doing what it's supposed to do. But no, absolutely, when it scales, it will do so safely.
Yes, absolutely, which is what needs to happen.
That lovely sustainable word, but that's what it needs to do. It needs to do it quite organically.
So what are the challenges for you personally over the next few years?
I think it's back to that safety word. It's scaling up, and it is a startup. It will become a scale up, as they call it, and it's doing that safely. So, coming from a credit background, obviously one of the biggest risks
is credit.
Exactly. And when you're looking at other people's credits, if somebody scales up too quickly, it can be a bit of a red flag.
Yeah.
So, having watched it in my relationship companies, it's interesting putting it to the same test as the company that we're now running. But yes, doing it safely is going to be the absolute key. We've got, I'm absolutely passionate about culture. I've seen it done badly and I've seen it done well, and the difference it can make to a business and the strategy and the success of the strategy is immeasurable, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
So I'm absolutely passionate about culture. So all the culture is already laid out and how it will be.
Okay.
But that obviously has a risk involved when you bring new people in and making sure you get the right people, and that they all can buy into that. So yes, which is part of the growth and scaling up.
Yeah.
But the culture, over trading obviously, as a kind of concept, absolutely stay away from. So growing it safely in terms of the financials, but also growing it with people and making sure we've got that, we maintain that culture.
Yeah, which is lovely, because you must have seen a massive difference from working for the big banks to what you have now in terms of culture. It must be totally different.
Yeah, definitely. And actually, I think partly, I suspect a lot of the big banks have changed, actually. I mean, this is, I was dealing with the big banks when I started, and then I've gradually ended up to a startup.
Yeah.
And I think I wondered if it was because it was a startup, and it does change. Of course it does.
Yeah.
Actually, I think the big banks are moving away from that, or trying to move away from that sort of bureaucracy as well, and really thinking about their culture. And the PRA and the FCA are putting a lot of emphasis on culture.
Yes.
So I think everybody understands actually that is one of your biggest mitigants of risk.
Yeah.
Is your culture. And you know, COVID, we spoke a little bit about it before, but COVID has changed how people see their work-life balance.
Definitely.
And everybody's is different. Nobody has the same work-life balance. It's your own perspective on it, but everybody had a little look at it and thought, well, this is what is important to me.
Yeah.
So I think people have had to lean into that really, and appreciate that it does matter. And so that I think a lot of the banks have probably changed a bit.
Yeah, I think COVID gave us all a bit of a time to sit up and take stock and think about what's important, and maybe exacerbated or enhanced that journey that banks would have been on anyhow.
Yes, I think that's true.
It was just an immediacy that had to be done there and then, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so. And I think it does give, you know, the smaller banks and fintechs, it gives us an advantage because you can accommodate some of these sort of flexibilities, or hybrid working's a bit easier sometimes.
Yeah.
So I think and that's nice, you know, everyone, you get to choose.
Yes.
So
that agile way is really good, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely.
Excellent. Any snippets for those individuals, ladies or further afield, that want to get into banking and how to accelerate your career or focus your career?
I think, to be honest, networking is my probably number one tip.
Yeah.
And actually, Debbie was talking about Debbie Moscow. I think she said networking is your net worth.
Yes.
You know, it's absolutely, and you don't always want to go, you know, it would be easier to go home at the end of a work day and put your feet up and put your slippers on. And that would be easier.
Yeah.
But actually going out, making an effort, you always meet someone interesting. It's never wasted, that networking.
No.
So I think networking, absolutely key. And I don't know that I realised that earlier enough on in my career, to be honest, because it is uncomfortable putting yourself out there, especially when you're younger, but definitely do it and just get better at it, and it gets easier the more you do it. And reading, actually, I think. So I set myself a challenge this year that it was actually someone else set it for me to put in my place. But anyway, I have to read a book every other week. Yeah. And it's amazing. You kind of, just the difference styles people talk about. And, you know, someone will talk about gravitas, someone else will talk about culture, someone else will talk about I'm trying to think what I've read recently. The likability trap. There's also, there was one called enchantment, which is just about little, glimmers of happiness that you look for. Yeah. But there was one called My What If Year. This CEO basically took on 4 different jobs, like internships over the course of a year, just to see what she thought of it. And people are doing all these amazing things and writing about it. Yeah. And then there's all these clever people that are writing about, Simon Sinek's got the Just Ask Why. And, all of these books that just challenge you and make you think a bit differently. And so networking, reading, I think they'd be my top tips.
I love that, networking and reading. I think that is 2 really good takeaways from our talk today. And thank you very much, Lucy, for your time.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.